A recent study estimated that 87% of people sleep with their smartphone next to their bed, and most of them check them first thing upon waking. Perhaps we wake up to a text from someone at work, or see a news alert of another tragedy across the world, or get sucked into social media, and just as we're beginning our day, we're feeling anxious or angry, jealous or sad. Do you know the feeling? What if there is another way to begin our day? What if there can be a practice we can adopt from the life of Jesus to help us begin each day with the peace of God? Last week, you conducted a formation audit. You made a list of all your habits and relationships, and then attempted to connect the dots between these forces and your formation or deformation. Did you identify any habits, relationships, or stories that seem to be having a negative effect on you? For many of us, the next step would be to replace an old habit with a new practice. To that end, this week's practice is to read Scripture daily. Maybe you noticed last week that the very first thing you do in the morning is read the news or go on social media. Or just before bed, you surf the internet or play video games to relax. Though these things might have given you an initial burst of energy, you might have started to realize that they ended up making you feel restless or anxious. The practice for this week encourages us to replace these habits with the practice of relaxing into God's presence with Scripture. When we read Scripture, we turn our attention to God, who is good, beautiful, and true. And as we focus on God, we grow more like God. As Daniel Siegel, a professor of psychiatry, points out, where attention goes, neural firing flows, and neural connection grows. In other words, we become like what we pay attention to. When we meet God through Scripture, we are spiritually and neurologically formed. You may already be reading Scripture daily. If so, this week's practice is to continue what you are already doing. But if this is not the case for you, the daily reading of Scripture can serve as an important foundation for your spiritual journey. In your guide, we have recommendations for reading plans for Scripture and resources from our friends at the Bible Project. You might also explore a Bible reading practice like Lectio Divina, where you meditate on Scripture with an open heart so that God's work can speak to you in a deeply personal and powerful way. Remember, the goal of reading Scripture is not to consume information, but to experience God deeply and intimately. To help you process your experiences with these practices, we have included a practice reflection in your guide. Before you come back next week, take 10 minutes to reflect on your week with God and be ready to share what God is teaching you. God bless and form you as you immerse your mind and heart in Scripture this week.